right. That should be up and running on YouTube in just a second. For those who find that an easier way to connect. Okay, and one more. Well, a few more clicks, not quite just one more. Never quite just one more click. There we go. Hopefully you can all see the screen now with the first slide in position. Should say something like first thoughts. Well, at least that's what it said when I typed it, and that's what it says when I'm looking at it. Okay. We're just going to give it one more minute in case people are navigating the various types of technology needed. I do like to start close to on time, but I also know that we need sometimes a little buffer, just like if somebody was running late because they were caught at a red light, even with technology. Sometimes people can be a couple minutes behind what they thought they would be. Never be afraid, however, to join late. If you happen to be caught late, that's okay. It happens. Just come whenever you can. All right, there's our 2-minute buffer. So let's go ahead and get down to work. So good afternoon. I think I know everybody on the Zoom link, but I will introduce myself to anyone who might be watching this through YouTube. My name is Rabbi Joshua Neely, and I'm the rabbi of Temple Israel, which is in Winter Springs, Florida, which is just a little bit to the north of the greater Orlando area. It's a rather wide, sprawling suburban area, much like my original hometown of San Diego. So I'm very familiar with the idea that there's a freeway that stretches for miles and everything along it seems like it's connected. As we're going to find out in our discussion today, well, actually, things are all connected. This is the first session of the 5782 Pathway to Judaism course. That doesn't mean it's been the 5,782 or second time that I've taught this, but it does mean that we've begun the new calendar year for the Jewish calendar. And this first thoughts class is really meant to help people orient not only for the class itself, but also to Judaism as a concept, as well as giving some very helpful, I hope, tips and pointers on how to supplement your Jewish learning in addition to what we do together. So with that in mind, let's go ahead and get things rolling. So the class, well, the class is a class, but this is not your high school class. This isn't your university class. This is a class that is open for anybody that is interested in learning. Now, some of you may be interested in converting to Judaism and want to know more about it in order to make that decision, or if you're very firm in that decision, to be sure that you're going to be doing it right once you have officially converted. Others of you may be joining the class, even though you were born Jewish or converted long ago and have been practicing Judaism for some or most of your life. But you know that sometimes the things we learned when we were younger, well, they don't always stick around in our mind, or perhaps we didn't understand or appreciate them with all the depth we wished when we first encountered them. This class covers, this class is designed to appeal to all types of learners. Now, the class is at this time, which means Thursdays at 6 p.m. For the moment, we are sticking with the online system. When we are able to go back in person comfortably, we will still have the online option as well. And I will keep you updated when our congregation makes that decision. If there is a holiday, that is to say a Jewish or secular holiday, then most likely this class is going to be canceled. It's simply impossible to do two things at once. If there is a special community event, meaning a special program in our congregation, or as there was last week, a Shiva, meaning I need to visit with another family, then this class will also be canceled. I will try to keep people up to date. And as you can see, I would love for you to send me an email just to say that you are officially in this year's class, so I don't have to go back and try and work that out from the other communication exchanges we've had. But if I have that list, I'll be happy to send you a notice if we are canceling. And I will also advise you to double check the TIFlorida.org, our website calendar for up-to-date information about classes, or you can follow us on Facebook and get updates there, or you can join our WhatsApp group. If you're not part of our WhatsApp group and would like to be, please contact me by email or text after the class, and I'll be happy to send you that link. We don't make that public because we, need to avoid unfortunate trolls that can sometimes wander into that space. So that is the general outline for the class. Now, I am not going to hunt you down. Right? This is not your high school where you're going to get a truancy or detention if you miss a class. This is not even the university where you get docked for your absence and class attendance. This is a adult endeavor, which means I will treat you like adults. You are responsible for showing up. You are responsible for learning. And especially if you are somebody interested in conversion, as Judaism is not pro-proselytizing, we don't go around trying to drag people into Judaism, I will not hunt you down. Now, if you have trouble, if there are problems, please contact me. I would love to know that. And if there's anything I can do to help make your learning or your life easier, I will certainly do so. But simply not showing up is not an alarm bell. That just means, in my mind, that for some reason this week you weren't able to, or if it becomes a habitual pattern, that for some reason you've had to realign your priorities during this time. I don't hold that against you. I know what life is like. I feel very blessed that I get to do this class every week, but I get to arrange my schedule to make the class work for me. And I know that your schedules may not be quite so flexible sometimes. So if you have been gone for a few weeks and you want to come back, that's okay. There is no embarrassment and there is no criticism. I've had people rejoin after a year of absence, and you know what? That works. As long as the person is interested in learning, I am interested in having them in the class. If you are interested in conversion, then as I've explained to some of you privately, but I'd like to say just more generally, then there are a few other things you need to do. This class is not sufficient in and of itself to get you everything you need before you feel prepared to become Jewish. You need to come to services at our congregation. Those are Friday and Saturdays. If you miss some, that's okay, but the more you attend, the more you will connect to not only the community, but also the practice of what Judaism does during those times. You need to read the weekly Torah portion on your own. And I'll talk later on about how you can easily find that to be able to study. You need to begin to practice some of what we learn here, whether it be the concepts of tzedakah, of charitable giving, whether it be the concept of lashon hara, protecting and guarding how we speak, whether it be the concept of kashrut or Shabbat, of watching how we eat or watching how we celebrate our Shabbats, our Friday, Saturdays. Put a few into practice as we go along. If you need more guidance and advice on that, please contact me and I'll be happy to instruct you. You should also be attending Jewish social and cultural events, both here at Temple Israel, as well as in the broader community. Please check out the Jewish Federation of Greater Orlando, jfgo.org, for their calendar of events. There is a lot going on, a lot of it virtual at the moment, but more and more coming back in person as well. And this will help you be affiliated with the broader community. Also, if you are in the process of converting, then you should begin learning Hebrew. And I'm afraid I didn't edit this slide. We don't actually have an active Sunday class at the moment because our teacher was unable to continue during the current situation. But if you are looking for resources for Hebrew, please let me know and I can give you some pointers. And we'll talk later on in the whole class curriculum, not tonight, about conversion as a concept in Judaism, but this should at least get you started. Any questions or comments so far before we jump into our first ideas? All right. So, it was once asked of trying to teach Judaism on one foot. And I don't think that I can do a better job than was done at that time. But I would be negligent if I didn't give at least a little bit of a summary of what Judaism is all about in order to set the stage. So let's go ahead and review what was said about almost 2,000 years ago when someone wanted to understand what is Judaism. Our rabbis taught a certain Gentile, meaning non-Jew, once came before Shammai and asked him. Shammai was one of the great rabbis of his generation. How many Torahs do you have? 2, he replied, the written Torah and the oral Torah. And we will be talking about that in much more detail in just a session or two. This notion of having both the Torah that you're probably familiar with, the actual written out text of the Torah, Genesis, Exodus, etc., and the oral Torah, meaning the received traditional interpretation and application. Like I said, that full analysis will come in a later class. I believe you, said the person coming, with respect to the written, but not with respect to the oral Torah, meaning I'm okay if you tell me to follow the oral Torah, the written Torah, but if you tell me to follow the oral explanation, no, I'm not buying it. So make me a convert on the condition that you teach me the written Torah only, right? That's what he is saying. Just teach me the written one and we're done. But he, meaning Shammai, the rabbi, scolded and repulsed him in anger, basically chased him away saying, get out of here, you idiot. All right, that was one approach. He, meaning the same non-Jew, went before Hillel, who was another great rabbi of the time. And he, meaning Hillel, accepted him as a convert. On the first day, Hillel taught him Aleph, Bet, Gimel, Dalet. Those are the first 4 letters of the Hebrew Aleph Bet, the alphabet. The following day, he reversed the letters for him, meaning Hillel taught the letters backwards, meaning that the first day he showed him an Aleph and said, this is an Aleph. On the next day, he showed him a Dalet and he said, this is an Aleph. And the student was a little confused. But yesterday, you did not teach them to me thus, he protested, right? What are you talking about? That's reversed, it's flipped. Must you then not rely upon me, said Hillel. Then rely upon me in respect with the oral Torah as well. So what Hillel is trying to explain, and what I'm hoping you'll get as an understanding as we begin our study, is there is a certain element of trust, not blind trust by any means, but when you come to study with any teacher, you are trusting them that as they teach you, they will be teaching you the information that you need and information that is correct. It may seem strange as we go through some of the concepts of Judaism. It may seem strange that Judaism has its particular form of tradition and practice and fulfillment of the commandments, but you're going to have to rely on me that this is indeed the path that our people have taken. This is indeed what we believe was given to us 3,000 some years ago and has been inherited in each generation. Because no matter where you're going to learn, that is the implicit contract between you and the teacher. Of course, if you have questions, just like in the story, ask questions. If you have concerns, raise your concerns. If you have heard a different teaching or a different explanation, share that as well. There are many facets to Judaism, many of which are mutually in agreement, excuse me, but simply emphasize different ideas at different times. Sometimes there are differences of agreement, differences of opinion between different groups within Judaism, and that's important to recognize as well. So please try to give the benefit of the doubt to the explanations I'm giving, but also bring your doubts to the table so that we can discuss them as well. That is the only thing I ask as we start. Now, this story replays in a slightly different way as well. On one occasion, it happened that a certain Gentile came before Shammai, the same guy in the last story, and said to him, make me a convert on the condition that you teach me the whole Torah while I stand on one foot. Thereupon, Shammai repulsed him with the builder's cubit, which was in his hand, basically chased him off with the yardstick. So this non-Jew was basically saying, teach me everything I need to know while I'm standing on one foot, meaning teach it to me, right now, right? Teach it to me in 30 seconds. Give me the elevator pitch, if you will, for Judaism. Shammai, again, has a little bit of a temper problem and answers him very harshly and just chases him away. When he, the same non-Jew, went before Hillel, he said to him, meaning Hillel said to that non-Jew, what is hateful to you, do not do to your neighbor. That is the whole Torah, while the rest is its commentary. Go and learn it. Very important principle that often is portrayed as the golden rule, and there's many, many pages written of if this, what is hateful to you, don't do to others, is more or less advantageous than what you wish to be done to you, do to others. We're not going to get into the philosophy of those two different versions of the golden rule, but the second half is what's most important. We are going to be covering some very high-level aerial views of Judaism on many different topics. It may not feel like that. Sometimes we're going to be going even over the hour that I've set for this class. And as you can probably tell by now, I tend to talk a little quickly. And you're going to feel, wow, that was so much information. It's still just the tip of the iceberg. The rest is commentary. And that means that there is an obligation to go and learn more. Never think that what we study here together is the end. What we study here together is always the beginning of any topic that is on the table. And I'm going to pause again and ask if there are any questions or comments. Don't worry if you don't have any yet. I'm sure by the time we're done studying together, if not today, then other times you'll have plenty. Because we're going to round up this 1 foot explanation one more time to give you a little bit more about how I plan to run this class. On one occasion, a Gentile, meaning another person thinking of becoming Jewish, was passing behind a house of study when he heard the voice of a teacher reciting, and these are the garments which they shall make, a breastplate and an ephod. This is the section taken from the book of Exodus, which describes the clothing that is going to be worn in the Mishkan, in the tabernacle, by the high priest. Said he, for whom are these, right? So he's asking the people, and they say, well, it's for the high priest. Then he said to himself, I will go and I will convert that I can be appointed to be high priest. So basically, he's in it for the clothes. I don't know of many people who convert to Judaism just because of the amazing fashion, but this was what this guy was thinking. I'm going to convert in order to be able to wear the high priest's clothes. So he went before Shammai and said to him, make me a convert on a condition that you appoint me as a high priest. But he repulsed him with the builder's cubit, which was in his hand. Again, we have Shammai chasing the guy away. And that is obviously not helpful. So then the same person goes before Hillel, and Hillel makes him a convert. Now, understand, Hillel is making him a convert, having agreed to the idea that he would become a high priest. However, Hillel is doing this with an idea, with the underlying idea that after the person understands, they will retract their condition. So what happens? He said to him, right, about this condition of becoming a high priest, can any man be made a king, but who knows the arts of government? Go and study the arts of government. So what he's basically saying is, sure, we'll make you a high priest. But before we make you a high priest, you're going to have to go learn about being a high priest. So go work on that, and then we'll talk about it. So he, meaning again the convert, went and read. When he came to, and the stranger that approaches the tabernacle where the high priest served shall be put to death, he asked Hillel, to who does this apply? Even to David, king of Israel, was the answer, meaning even David, when he was king, was not allowed to go in to the Holy of Holies, where the high priest had to do his service. And if he had, then he would have been put to death. Thereupon, the convert reasoned within himself from the lesser to the greater. He's making a logical deduction. If of Israel, who are called the sons of the omnipresent God, and who in his love for them, he designated them Israel as my son, my firstborn, and about them it is written, and the stranger that approaches shall be put to death, how much more so a mere convert who comes with his staff and wallet, basically showing up like off the street. That's an idiom from the ancient world of, who knows who this guy is? He just showed up, and you think you're going to have the right to overshadow even those that were already given the Torah for thousands of years? Of course not. Then he went before Shammai and said to him, am I then eligible to be a high priest? Is it not written in the Torah, and the stranger that approaches shall be put to death? Meaning he went to Shammai and pointed out, all you had to say was that people who convert, and indeed the whole rest of Israel as well, can't become high priest. If you had just explained it to me, it would have helped. Now, would it have helped? Well, sometimes we always remember things a little differently, but at least this shows that this person has truly come to understand. And then he went before Hillel and said to him, O gentle Hillel, blessings rest on your head for bringing me under the wings of the divine presence. Sometime later, the three, meaning all three of the characters of the convert, met in one place. They said, Shammai's impatience sought to drive us from the world, but Hillel's gentleness brought us under the wings of the divine presence. So I hope you understand that I am trying to follow in Hillel's footsteps. I'm not going to convert somebody to become a high priest. You've already learned that's not going to happen. But hopefully you understand that I will try to always deal with questions and issues and concerns with gentleness. I'm not going to be angry. There was no such thing as a stupid question. There was no such thing as an idea that is not worth being shared. If there is some fundamental problem, I'll let you know. And that's part of our bargain of working together. All right. But what is it that we are working towards? I know that we already had Hillel say, what is hateful to you, do not do it unto others. But in all honesty, that's not really everything that you're going to have to learn. Traditionally, we say that there are 613 commandments, 613 mitzvot, 613 rules for being Jewish. And that sounds a little intimidating. So let's break it down a little bit more. Rabbi Simlai in the Talmud taught, there were 613 mitzvot stated to Moses, 365 prohibitions corresponding to the days in the solar year, and 248 commands, meaning thou shalt, corresponding to the number of a person's pieces. In the ancient world, they believed that if you added up all the different parts of a human being, that you could divide them into 248 discrete elements. It's not exactly the way we divide a body now in anatomy class, but it was the number that worked at the time. Of course, this means that symbolically, between the days of the year and the body of ourselves, it means our whole body and our whole life is filled with the commandments that God has given us. But 613, how do we get to that number, right? Rav Hamuna said, what is the verse, meaning to prove this? Moses commanded to us the Torah, an inheritance. Torah, meaning that literal word, in its numerical value is 611. Hebrew letters, much like in the Roman numerals, can be used for both letters as well as numbers. If you add up the Hebrew letters in the word Torah, you get the number 611, excuse me. Then continuing, I am, and you shall have no other gods, which are the first two commandments that are given in the 10 commandments found in Exodus 20, that I am the Lord your God, and you shall have no other gods. Those are the first two commandments. Well, those we heard from the mouth of the Almighty, right? So we got the Torah from Moses, which is 611 commandments, and we got I am and you shall directly from God. Add up 611 plus two more, 613. All right, it's a very nice proof of the idea that there are 613 commandments and there are official lists out there, not all 100% in agreement on that number 613, meaning listing out the different commands, but in agreement on 99% of them. However, that still seems like a long list. David, meaning King David, came along and established the 613 on 11. All right, so we're now going to begin a process of whittling down the commandments. And what's going on here is they're taking the number 613 and saying that you could derive those 613 from a smaller subgroup. That if you only had these 11, you would be able to see the foundation upon which the other 613 rest. So what are those 11? And this is taken from Psalm 15. He who walks wholeheartedly and works righteousness and speaks truth in his heart, who has no slander upon his tongue, does not do evil to his neighbor, doesn't take up reproach against his relative, in whose eyes a vile person is despised, and he honors those who fear the Lord. He takes an oath to his own detriment, meaning he is willing to swear something even though he loses by it because it's honest, and changes not. He neither gives his money with interest, nor takes a bribe against the innocent. He who performs these shall never be moved. So the 11 different attributes mentioned in this psalm are the 11 that the rabbis are saying you could derive the rest of the other mitzvot, see these 11 as being the foundation upon which the other 613 rest. But wait, we're not done, as they say in the infomercials. Isaiah came and established the 613 on 6, meaning that he is going to reduce it even more. And what are those 6? One who walks righteously and speaks uprightly, who despises the gain of oppressions, who holds back from taking bribes, who refuses to listen to the blood, meaning to hear things that are wrong and horrible, and one whose eyes are shut from looking upon evil. That if you were to focus upon doing those 6, that you would find yourself led into not only the 11 of David, but the 613 of the entire Torah. That these are the foundations upon which you could say the rest of them also flow. Micah, however, comes along, and he's going to do it even better. Micah came and established the 613 upon 3. As it is written, it has been told to you, mortal, what is good, and what the Lord does require of you, only to do justly, to love mercy, and to walk humbly with your God. 3 things. The Gemara, meaning the Talmud, elaborates, to do justly, this means doing justice. To love mercy, this is an allusion to the acts of loving kindness, acts of chesed. And to walk humbly with your God, which seems to be the most difficult perhaps to wrap our head around, this is an allusion to taking the indigent dead out for burial and accompanying the poor bride to her wedding canopy, both of which are performed without fanfare, glorifying the doer, meaning that you are doing what is good, but doing it in a modest way without seeking attention. You're not doing it to have your name in lights. You're doing it because God has shown you that this is the right way to live. And that is walking humbly. However, we can go better than 3. Isaiah established the 613 on 2 in a different verse. So says the Lord, observe justice and perform righteousness. Boom, there you go. If you want Judaism in a nutshell, we can get down to just 2 things, justice and righteousness. But Habakkuk, he comes along and he does it in 1. The righteous person shall live by his faith, which is basically saying, if you want to be righteous, you live by your faith, meaning your belief in God, and that will lead you back to where we began, to all 613, right? They are all connected. You can't ever say this one commandment is more important than the other. But this whole 613 to 11, 613 to 11 to 6 to 3 to 2 to 3 to 2 to 1 is not trying to say that only one commandment is better than all the others or only one commandment is important. It's trying to tell us that every commandment contains within it the seeds of all the other commandments. Every commandment, especially such as seeking God with our faith, contains the ability to open us up to the realization of everything else that is found in Judaism. So as we go through our class, we're going to be exploring lots of different commandments and lots of different topics, both history as well as the ritual, as well as more of our day-to-day interpersonal things. all of them are a starting point for finding our path towards all the others, and all of them are a starting point towards finding our path towards a relationship with God that is in keeping with Judaism. So there was a lot to learn, and don't be overwhelmed, because what's important is that we pick one or two things to start with and open it up there, and eventually we will reach the rest. Questions or comments? I do highly recommend, by the way, if you are interested in finding out more about this particular passage, that if you go to the Talmud in Makot 23b, you'll find that these little ellipses that I had to put in for the sake of time involved longer discussions among the different rabbis about how each of the previous categories would be applied. I did include the section here with Micah to show a little bit of how that works, but we didn't have time to go into all of the other lists with our study tonight. But I will explain how you can go find that in just a minute. And that's going to involve some learning about books. So we're going to go over in depth how a Jewish library is built, what the different major texts are in our history, because we do like our books. But these are some of the books that you really need to have. Now, I'm going to show you how you can get these in a digital form, but investing in a physical copy is still a very good idea. So the first one you're going to have is the Tanakh. This is a no-brainer because this is the Bible. Now, the Hebrew word Tanakh is actually an acronym. It stands for Torah, the first 5 books, Nevi'im, which are the books of the prophets, and Ketuvim, which are the books that contain the different writings. So Tanakh is the acronym that we use for the full Bible. Now, the JPS translation is the most widely accepted. The JPS translation is used in the book that we use, the Chumash, in our sanctuary. And the JPS translation is in very smooth modern English. You'll notice that I usually start with it when I do my Wednesday Torah classes. However, it's not the only version of a translation that is good to have. The Alter translation is very good. It is a more literary translation, trying to capture more of the literary feel of the text in the original Hebrew. The Everett Fox translation captures a bit more of the poeticness of the Hebrew as it could be applied into English, but there is no perfect translation. Now, in our sanctuary, like I mentioned, we use a Chumash. Now, the Chumash is not the Tanakh. The Tanakh has everything, Torah, prophets, writings, all together. The Chumash has the Torah, and it has a few selections taken from the prophets that are called the Haftorah, that are matched to the weekly Torah portions. And so that way we can read what is going to be done in our service in the sanctuary. But that is a great book to have. We use the Eitz Chaim Chumash. It's a great copy, good commentary, very interesting essays at the back. But you still need to get a full Tanakh in order to have all of the books of the Bible. Along with that, you're going to want to have a Siddur. Now, in the sanctuary, again, we use the Siddur known as Lev Shalem. Now, this is a great Siddur with tons of commentary, many different instructions, and a lot of very insightful comments and explanations of the different prayers. However, it only has the liturgy, the prayers, for Shabbat and festivals, which means for weekday services, the Sunday through Friday afternoon services, it's not in there. There are ways to piece it together, but it's clunky because it was designed to be used for Shabbat and festivals. I would recommend Siddur Sim Shalom, which is another Siddur put out by the conservative movement. And that prayer book covers both weekday and evening and Shabbat festival services. And you can also get it divided into pieces, which, for example, is what we use on our Sunday minyan for the weekday service on Sunday morning. That is a Sim Shalom for weekdays. And if you are looking to buy any of these, and I'll give you a few pointers on where to look later, and you're not sure if you're looking at the right one, just shoot me a text, email, whatever, and I'll be happy to confirm that you're on the right page before you buy it. A few other books to consider having in your library. One of them, The Observant Life. This is a wonderful book. It's a little thick, but don't be intimidated because it's divided up more like you might find an encyclopedia, meaning that you can look up different topics as you find them interesting. It explains very much why we do what we do. And the reasoning behind the mitzvot is a very important idea of study. The Jewish Home Advisor is another excellent book, which gives a very good description of how to do what we do. If we're talking about welcoming Shabbat at home, such as lighting candles or having Kiddush, if we're talking about hanging a mezuzah on our doorpost, this is a great place to find short synopses of how we do those things. It doesn't go into as much detail of why we do them. That's what the Observant Life is for, as well as this class, but it does give you a good reference book for actually doing what we do. The Story of the Jews or A History of the Jews are two very good Jewish history books. And there's a lot of Jewish history. And it is important to know our history. Judaism has been the product of 3,000 years of Jewish living, and it has been influenced in much of its cultural and traditional forms by the different experiences that our people have had. So knowing the history, at least in a broad sense, is a very helpful and important way of understanding Judaism. It is also a very important way to connect to the story of Judaism and find your place within it. That we each have our own paragraph to write, if you will, within the story of Judaism, and understanding what the story has been so far is an important part of that. We also see that the Commentator's Bible is a handy reference. This is another Torah section that is put out by JPS, and it is very nice because it contains not only the text and translation of the Torah, but an extensive collection of traditional Jewish commentaries put into modern English, which is very helpful if you don't speak Hebrew. So the Commentator's Bible is a very nice thing to invest in. It is a little pricey, and I'm going to show you a free online alternative in a second, but it is a little pricey, so you might want to invest in it one volume at a time. The Jewish Holidays is a great book that gives you, as it says in its title, a guide and commentary to the holidays, and we have a lot of holidays, and this is a nice way to get more out of them. Back to the Sources is a personal favorite of mine, which gives you an in-depth understanding of the different major books of Jewish literature. So if you want to know how all the books fit together, this will give you a much more in-depth discussion. Now, I'm going to go over those books in a later class, but I will not be able to match the level of detail of this commentary. If you're looking for a Spanish Hebrew Siddur, Kol Tuv Sfarad. Sefarad is a great website which has a Spanish Hebrew Siddur, and it is the one that we use for our Latino Shabbat service at Temple Israel. So that will give you a good resource for that. All right, so we got lots of books, but you know what? I know many of us, we're not always book people nowadays. When we like reading, we like studying, I get that. Many people prefer a Kindle. Many of those books that I mentioned are available digitally. Many others are really happy to use other digital forms. Thankfully, we are living in a beautiful time when a lot of the resources are being made available online, and it does have a few perks for how we can connect to them. The two at the top of the list here, we're going to look at in more detail in just a second. But as far as online study goes, the Ziegler School of Rabbinic Studies, the Jewish Theological Seminary, both have excellent online archives for Jewish learning. And those are the two American seminaries for conservative rabbis. So please take advantage of everything they have put out. Sefaria is an online resource really for classic Jewish texts. It does have some modern things on it, but it is not as easy to navigate. But as far as the classic texts go, it's really an amazing, miraculous resource. HebeCal is not as fancy because it doesn't do so much, but it does one thing really, really well, and that's help you navigate the Jewish calendar. And I'm going to actually switch out of our view here and just give you a quick tour of how these work. So hopefully you can still see me in my switch over here to HebeCal. And you can see that in HebeCal that we get a basic page like this, and it tells you right up at the top what the day it is in the Gregorian calendar, the secular calendar, the day in the Hebrew calendar, and the current Torah portion. You may remember that I mentioned that reading the Torah portion each week is very important. If you click on that Torah portion, it'll tell you a brief summary, and it will tell you exactly what chapter and verses to read in order to be able to do it. It's also got the option to be able to hear it and to see it in other ways. But we're going to go through, let me just make sure I'm going to the right link. Yes, we're going to go through Sefaria. This is Sefaria's Torah view. You can change the arrangement if you like, but if we click on our first verse here, which is from Lech Lecha, the beginning of Abraham becoming the central figure in the journey towards our people, when you click on it, you'll notice on the right-hand side, a whole lot appears. Commentary, links in the Talmud, links to Midrash, links to Halacha, other links in Tanakh, Targum, Kabbalah, etc. If you don't know what all these mean, don't worry. First of all, you can always click and find out. Second of all, we will talk about them in a later class so that you can navigate this better. But just to give you a quick example, if you click on commentary, you can see that many of the commentaries are available in English and others are not. If it says EN, then there is an English translation for it. And if I click on my good friend Rashi, it will give us the opening lines and it will give a short understanding of why this verse says what it says, how it says. It will try to give you a bit more depth and commentary on that verse. And as you go through each verse, there will be more commentary, more ideas, more information, and all of it is linked so that you can jump from idea to idea to idea and follow it down. Which, just to go back and show you a little bit more how that works, we're going to go back to Rashi here. And it says that his idea is found also in the Talmud, Rosh Hashanah 16b. If I click on that, now it's open over here. And here, just off the surface, it says that there is a verse in Deuteronomy. If I click on that, now I'm in Deuteronomy. So it's that easy to be able to open up and follow ideas and satisfy your curiosity. It really is an amazing resource that is unbelievably powerful and useful. You can also look up topics in general. You can also look up things that have been put out by the community, different sheets that people have used to gather texts on a certain topic. You can search for those using the search, and it is a great resource to make yourself familiar with. And of course, there are apps, so you can get this all on your phone or tablet and even download it so you don't have to worry about your Wi-Fi connection. And it's just an amazing resource. I love the fact that I can walk around with one of the greatest Jewish libraries in all of history just in my pocket, ready for me whenever I want to look something up. All right, so let's just go ahead then and look at a few other things. I need to switch back to present mode because it looks much, much better like that. And we're going to look at a few other online resources. So Seminario Rabbinico Latinoamericano is the seminary for the conservative movement in Buenos Aires in Latin America. And if you are looking for Spanish resources, please go there. You can also go to rabbinical.assembly.org. This is the Association for Conservative Rabbis internationally. It is in English. And in addition to many online materials, you in particular should check out the section on Jewish law, which can be very interesting, although depending upon what you have learned so far, might be a little confusing. But They also are an important seller of Jewish books. For example, Lev Shalem or Eitz Chaim that I mentioned earlier on for a Siddur or a Chumash. Also, you might want to check out Almad Pardes, which is a great organization in Israel. It is not a conservative movement organization, but it does have a very traditional and inclusive feel to their teaching. They do an excellent history podcast and many other topics as well. So if you are a podcast listener, I highly recommend many of their different podcast series. For more general knowledge, My Jewish Learning and Wikipedia.org are both good resources. Yes, I know many people say Wikipedia, oh no, I can't read Wikipedia. Anyone can edit that. Wikipedia is a great resource by and large. Yes, it shouldn't be your only resource, but as an initial place to look up information, it's not a bad starting place. And as long as you stay away from more controversial topics, such as the status of Israel in the modern world, you'll generally find reliable information. It's especially good if you are looking up historical information, as they will often have articles on Jewish historical figures that are hard to find elsewhere. And you will need to eventually buy some more books yourself. Of course, you've got Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and they do have many good books. Even the local Barnes & Noble will always have some Jewish books in the religious section of their stores. However, if you're looking for more traditional books, Nahora.com and MySefer.com are both good and also multilingual. If you are looking for Sephardim Center, it's another good one. And if you are looking for books that are out of print, may I recommend eBay? I know it seems strange, but oftentimes you will find used books for more reasonable prices on eBay than you will on Amazon or Barnes & Noble. Amazon and Barnes & Noble often are using algorithms for calculating the price. And eBay, on the other hand, you're buying from human sellers, and often you'll be able to get a much better deal. So look around. If you're having trouble trying to find a book I recommended, please let me know, and I'll be happy to steer you with more concrete advice. And I'm seeing that we've got some questions up in the chat box. Let me just open that up and see if there's anything that hasn't been mentioned. Where can we buy the Siddur? Yes, Rabbinical Assembly, like I said, is probably your easiest place to go for that. You can also go to the United Synagogue website, uscj.org. I'll put that into chat so that people have that written out. Just a moment. And as Joseph also mentioned, Masorti Olami is a good organization to keep track of. Masorti is the international wing of the conservative movement. The word conservative is obviously English, which means if you live in France, if you live in Germany, if you live in Chile, if you live in Israel, well, English is not your first language. So instead, they use the word Masorti, which means traditional or conservative in Hebrew, as the name for the international arm. And it's a great organization to check out and to help support. All right. So that's going to finish us up for our first class. So does anyone have any questions or comments before we wrap it up for today?
Do you know if there's any resources on like Mizrahi Judaism or Middle Eastern Jews?
So for Mizrahi, you can find a number of different resources. You can find the Siddur for Mizrahi. You'll find different prayer book variations, 80 to 90% the same, but between the Europeans and the Latin Americans and the Middle Eastern, you'll find some variation. And you can find Mizrahi Siddurim. And at the other books that I mentioned here, Nahora, MySefer, and Forum Center, you can also find some Mizrahi-centered books. However, much of Mizrahi literature, Middle Eastern Jewish literature, is aimed at people who speak Hebrew. So there isn't a lot that has been translated specifically yet. I know that you can find Siddurim, but other books often have a bit of a Hebrew barrier to entry, if you will. So that's something to be aware of. If you email me or text me later about which types of Mizrahi books you're interested in, I can do a little bit more research. And as Joseph mentioned, he has a classmate that's Mizrahi, and maybe she can help as well.
Yeah, I seen that. Thanks you. Thank you. I appreciate it.
Any other questions or comments? All right, then we are going to finish for tonight. And once again, we'll be meeting again for this class next Thursday, 6 p.m. And you are welcome to join me in any of my other classes that I have throughout the week. And of course, welcome and encouraged to participate in services. And if you're not able to come to us, try and find someplace close to you and just be part of the community. Take care, everyone, and be well.
Thank you so much, Rabbi.